Welcome all to the September 11th, 2025 Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors meeting. I will be calling the meeting to order at the time of 9:08. I'm going to ask Amber to kindly take attendance and confirm that we have a quorum. Actually, we may not be able to confirm that now, but take attendance, please, Amber.
Thank you, Fran. Ava Bermudez Zimmerman, just going to scan through really quick. She has not yet joined us, so I'll circle back. Isha Canada.
Present.
Adrian Cochran has not yet joined us. Andrea Comer, Sheila Hummel, and Ellen McKitterick may or may not join us. Eleanor Michael.
Present.
Fran Pastore.
Oh, wait, Eleanor is, sorry, Melissa's here in the waiting room.
Excellent. David Salazar Austin.
Present.
Mike Soltis. Mike Soltis. Did we lose Mike?
Mike, you're on mute.
Present.
Thank you. Molly Weston Williamson.
Present.
Holly Williams.
Present.
Janae Woods Weber.
Present.
Justin Zartman.
Present.
Melissa Gibran.
Present.
Good morning, Melissa. And circling back, has Ava joined us yet? Not yet. And Adrian Cochran has also not joined us, but we do have a quorum. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, first order of business is a review of the August 14th meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or discussion? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes of August 14th.
Mike, thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Aisha. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes, Holly Williams. I wasn't here.
Thank you, Holly. The motion carries then. Okay. We are going to move to item 3 on the agenda, discussion and vote to adopt the proposed revisions to the consolidated policies based on Public Act 25-174. Michael, would you kindly lead this discussion?
Absolutely. Thank you, Fran, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Right. So as Fran mentioned, this topic is about the revisions to consolidated policies with respect to the Public Act 25-174, which is the expansion of coverage for certain employees of public schools and non-public schools. Just to remind the board, a couple months ago, you had voted to post these revisions to consolidated policies for public notice and comment. That notice and comment period ended last month. This is a reminder of the items that were on that list of changes. The top one's probably the most substantive. This is springboarding off of the new language in the statute that allows us to have an alternate calculation formula for these employees, which was meant to equalize the payout for folks who just choose to get paid over different schedules, even though they work the same amount each year. The other items are more technical in nature, including allowing us to have a different employment verification form for these employers because we asked for slightly different information in the claims process. We updated some of the language because now we have a defined term, public school operator, so we updated the policies to reflect that, and then changing the order of citations due to the numbering because of the change of statutes. So during the notice and comment period, we didn't receive any official notice or questions from the public, but we did do a lot of outreach that generated other questions from the public. So we felt they were necessary to address in the policies, and since they came in during the notice and comment window, we felt it was appropriate to make those changes at this time. So this is the language that if you're looking at the documents that were sent by Stephanie, this is the language that's highlighted in yellow. It's primarily around the sort of these marginal cases of whether an employee is considered certified or not certified, and therefore are they covered or not covered, because they sort of have 1 foot in one area, 1 foot on the other side of the line. The first topic that came up was around durational shortage area permit educators, DSAP. This is sort of a program that allows teachers in training to temporarily fill positions that require certification before they officially have it. It's primarily meant for schools that are having difficulty hiring teachers. So it's sort of an opportunity both for the employee to get the training they need, as well as the school to fill a position that they're having difficulty filling. At the end of the day, we felt like these positions still require certification, and it's really this individual got an exemption from the State Department of Education, so therefore it doesn't change the position to a non-certified position. Therefore, we consider those positions to be certified, therefore they're not part of our program, at least for now, unless they opt in. This wasn't the reason for the decision, but an added benefit of this is that you won't have a person who's in training to be a certified teacher pay into the program for a year or two and then have the coverage taken away from them when they actually get their certification, which we all know they're working towards. So it's an added benefit of going with this direction. The second sort of marginal case that we wanted to talk about and add to the policies was related to certification as it applies to non-public schools. So our reading of Chapter 166 of the Connecticut General Statutes is that there is no certification requirement by statute for non-public schools. Those laws are focused on the public school operators. However, a particular school can by policy decide that they will only fill a position with a certified teacher. If that's the case, that is a position that requires certification and therefore would not be part of our program. One thing to note, this is not about the individual person, whether they're certified, it's about whether the school has an official policy requiring that certification. So in that case, it would be a non-covered employee. The third area that we wanted to add language around to clarify was for people who perform multiple jobs for the same school. Some of those jobs might require certification, some that don't. And how do you decide? Do they just pay for the certification role, or do they, and not pay for the non-certified? We said if it's for the same employer, really what matters is that what is the primary role for that employee? If that primary role is a certified position, then they're not part of our program. That primary role is non-certified, then they are part of our program, and all their income from that employer would be included in the program. So that's it as far as the sort of substantive changes that were highlighted in yellow. There also were a couple minor edits into wordsmithing. We were a little more clear, and rather than saying shall be deemed, we said are in one sentence. And we updated the lead-in to a section just to account for the above additions. So as Fran mentioned, the ultimate goal here is to have the board vote to officially adopt these policy changes. But before that can happen, I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions for Michael? I don't see any hands raised.
I don't have a question, but can I just make a comment?
Of course, Justin.
So, yeah, Michael, those clarifications based on public questions, as most of you know, I deal with public schools in Connecticut all the time, the DSAP, the not working in an area that may require certification, that comes up a lot with paraprofessionals. And I agree with all those that you have made, because I see those issues come up a lot. So I think that clarifies it, and it's probably the best way to go for us.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
That's great feedback, Justin. Thank you so much. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, I am going to ask for a motion to adopt the proposed revisions to the consolidated policies based on Public Act 25-174. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Justin, thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everyone. The motion will carry.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is item 4, the quarterly update and the contribution rate discussion. So I'm going to ask everybody to really pay attention here, and this is a really important part of the meeting. So thank you, and I'll pass it over to the Spring Group.
Everyone, good morning. I'm going to share my screen, get started. And just confirm that you can see my screen. Great.
We can see your screen, Harindra. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the purpose of my part of the presentation is to firstly talk about the quarterly results and then get into the rate review and sensitivity analysis that we have prepared for your review. So as it relates to the quarterly results, I actually presented the same results previously in the last meeting. So no, there have not been any changes to these numbers. Overall, just at a high level, these numbers are provided on an incurred basis and represent the full year, July 2024 through June 2025. The starting fund balance was 628.7 million. Net activity for the period was 12.3 million, slightly lower than the number that we had presented back in June. And overall, that leaves us with an ending fund balance of 641 million, slightly lower than what we had projected previously of 642.8 million. Overall, the funding metrics all below targets. So in other words, meet the targets. So the fund position today remains strong, and within the funding metrics or the target levels of the funding. So no other comments on this from my end. I'll move on to the second part of this, just the rate review and sensitivity analysis. To kick things off, let me turn it over to Erin to talk about this.
Thank you, Harindra. So just as a reminder for everyone, the board's statutory and the program's statutory responsibilities are threefold: to provide the income replacement benefits to covered workers, to collect contributions so that we have a trust fund balance that's sufficient to enable us to pay those benefits, but also to make sure that we don't have a lot of increases or to the contribution rate or benefit reductions. So the statute specifically wants us to maintain a relatively even keel, and they don't want us to have to switch things around due to changing economic conditions. And then thirdly, we are required by statute to conduct that outreach and education campaign to make sure people know about the program. So over the years, our statutory obligation is to set the contribution rate each year by November 1st. And in addition, the contribution rate is capped at 0.5%. Over the years, since we've started, we've had a lot of discussion about what factors should go into setting the contribution rate. And a year ago, after several months of discussion, the board adopted this policy, which really sets forth both the factors that should be considered as well as a time frame. And so we are following that policy, and a lot of the analysis that Harindra and the Spring Group have done are based on these factors. But just to highlight the considerations that are included in sort of the analysis, it includes that ability of the authority to continue to pay benefits, both in the short term and the long term, to make sure that the funds are sufficient despite a variety of economic conditions. We try to make sure that we take into consideration things going up and things going down.
Mm-hmm.
We also want to make sure that we are very mindful of the statutory directive to limit variability in the rates as well as in the benefit calculations. We want to make sure that we include an evaluation of trends relating to the receipt of contributions, as well as any other factors that the authority deems to be relevant, both with regard to the solvency of the fund and the operations of the program. So this is the policy that the board adopted a year ago, August.
So
you've seen this slide before. I'll let Harindra talk about it.
Go ahead. Okay. Yes. So this provides historical view of what the average weekly benefit rate in millions has been doing. And as you can see, we go back to July last year, the number was close to 8 million. If you go even further back, it was even much lower. We've seen the average weekly benefit amount, so the payments increase over time. So just one of the factors that we wanted to show you the trend over time. So elements of the rate calculation, we had talked extensively about this previously last year and so on. And the three elements that I wanted to bring forward based on the calculation methodology that was adopted. One, looking at it over the long term, effectively ensuring that the program is sustainable. Opted to look at it over a 10-year period. And then we talked about how much money should the fund have at the end of 10 years for the purposes of looking at the rates. Based on what we looked at the time and looking at history and some of the things that have happened, we established that we wanted to have a minimum fund to cover the situation where there is a 10% reduction in contribution over 10 years to ensure that we have enough money to cover that. And then also that there's a 25% increase in claims and expenses over 3 years. So those are the two factors that were that would be reasonable to ensure that we have a reasonable fund balance at the end of 10 years. And then the third element is really looking at what rate, what should we do to the rate, either increase it or decrease it to ensure that we have that amount of money in the fund balance at the end of 10 years. So we're looking at, should we increase the rate or decrease the rate to get to that? Looking at the data and looking at the results that I presented.
Excuse me, Harinder, excuse me, may I interrupt? There's a lot of interference coming from somewhere in the background, so I'm just, it looks like
sorry.
everybody's muted, but I can't be sure. I don't see every single person, but if we can, if anybody that isn't muted, would you kindly mute? Thank you. Sorry.
No, absolutely. Do you want me to repeat any of the things that items I said, Fran, or do you think that's sufficient?
I think we're okay.
So the fund balance as of the end of the fiscal year 2025 is 641 million. Overall costs and benefit projections, so overall net activity over that 10-year period is 258.6 million negative. So it's overall incurred contributions 5.9 million plus investment income of 145 million. It's a little bit lower than the overall estimated claims expense and other expense of 500.
Harinder, we're losing you. You've gone mute.
You're not on mute, but your voice is fading. And now we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties maybe on my end. So let me just
That's better.
That's better. I think when you're leaning in, it's better. When you pull back, we can't hear you.
Thank you. So just to recap, the fund balance at the end of fiscal year 2025 is 641 million. Net activity projected over the next 10 years based on our baseline scenario is a negative 258.6 million. Income overall, so contributions plus investment income, is a little bit lower than the claims plus other expenses, which is why there's a deficit. And we talked a bit about that previously as well. But overall incurred contributions estimated to be about 5.9 million. Investment income about 145 million. But claims at 5.8 million plus other expenses of 500 million. Both would add up to a greater number than the projected income. So we expect the fund to decrease by about 258.6 million, which would leave a fund balance at the end of 10 years of about 382.4 million, based on this baseline scenario. Now, looking at the factors that make up what we deemed an appropriate fund balance amount in 10 years, that amount worked out to be 761.9 million. So that's 10% of contributions at 0.5% over 3 years, plus 25% of incurred claims and other expenses over 3 years. Okay. So in other words, there would be a shortfall of about 379.5 million. When we looked at it, that to get to a balance of 761.19 million, it looked like the rate would need to increase to cover that outstanding deficit. And the rate action would, if it was possible, would have been about a 6.4% increase to the current rate based on our current scenario. Pause there. Everyone digest that. I'm also going to talk a bit about the other expenses of supplements, just provide some supplementary information around that, just because that came up previously. So the total other expenses, if you look back here, was 511.8 million. Just some clarification around that. The authority's administration costs, expenses is about 196.7 million over a 10-year period. And the claims administration is about 300 million. This small amount for bond repayment of 12.8 million. And so the total is 511.8 million. Okay, so just some clarification, this is again over a 10-year period. The estimated reserve necessary at the end of 10 years to support the rate change, just a little bit of more detail around that. So we did review last year several adverse scenarios impacting program funding, including looking at scenarios like where we had the pandemic or the recession back in 2008, 2009, to look at kind of what happens with employment, what happens with costs, and so on. And that's how we ended up selecting to come up with a sort of a simplified view, a 10% reduction in premium, in other words, lower employment, let's say, over a 3-year period, and or increase in claims activity over a 3-year period. So claims and other expenses of about 25%, so higher claims, in part based on what we've seen. Okay. I do have several sensitivity scenarios that I want to talk through as well. I'm thinking maybe I'll open it up for questions now just on this part first, just because I see Melissa have your hand raised, and then I'll get to the sensitivity stuff. So
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it.
Thank you. And I'm happy to wait as well if you're in the flow. What do you have a preference, Horinda?
No, I'm easy.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right. So my questions are revolving the first bullet point under items included in other expenses. The administration for the Connecticut paid leave, you're estimating is going to be 196.7 million in 2035. Is that correct?
it's between 2026 to 2035, so over a 10-year period. So it's not just a
Right.
number, it's a 10-year number.
No, I understand that. So at the end of the 10 years, you're saying that the expenses for the administration will be annually 196.7 million. Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
This is a total for 10 years. So annually it would be 1/10 of this, roughly.
So are you forecasting how many employees are going to be in this 10-year forecast? I'm confused about showing this number as a potential increase in a 10-year forecast. My confusion is, what is the percentage? Do you have a set percentage every year or a set increase amount every year to get to the 196.7?
Yeah. So just to clarify, this is total for 10 years. So, roughly 20 million per year on an annual basis. We do reflect estimated increases in salary, roughly 4%,
At
as
what,
well
I'm
as,
sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What was the
Mm.
percent of the salary?
I believe it's around 4% in salary.
4?
I believe it's around 4% per year salary increase.
Why would we assume a 4% salary increase every year? And are we following some sort of unionized schedule for non-unionized staff?
So I'm going to jump in on that. So for purposes of making estimates about the cost of our operational team, we do include historical data with regard to the state salary increases. And so historically, it's actually been more than 4%, so 4%, but we know that things have changed or are likely to change. So classified state employees in the last few years have received,
A 33% increase.
well,
That is what our state employees have received over the last several years.
well, on an annual basis, you get, state employees have the opportunity for a raise associated with an annual increase and then performance evaluation increase, which is usually about 2 to 2.5% at each time. So that's about 4 to 5% each year. So we've been looking at that history of what state employees have receive on an annual basis. With regard to how we approach raises for the staff at the Paid Leave Authority, a portion of our employees are unionized classified state employees who are subject to whatever negotiated rates are determined by the state. The state of Connecticut did adopt a statutory change several years ago in the State Personnel Act 5-200-P, I think, sub P, to say that whatever negotiated rates are established for non-unionized employees, those shall be carried forward for the non-unionized employees. And at the authority, we have adopted that same approach. That is not mandated by statute. That is not mandated by the governor's office. That is something that the board has to vote on each year. But it has been our recommendation as staff that we follow what the rest of the state is doing for a whole variety of reasons, including trying to avoid salary inversion, which are the problems that the state has had. So historically, in our short history, if the unionized employees get a raise, we will match that for the non-unionized employees. So that is the assumption that has been built in.
So I
Thank you,
appreciate
Erin.
that. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. I'd just like to follow up on that, please, for two moments. The first is if you could send me the statute you're referring to, 5-200-P. I'd be interested in understanding that a little bit more. And then secondly, I was not aware that we had unionized staff. I assumed because we were a quasi that, and we don't have office space and we're in the virtual world, that we did not have unionized staff. So can you just tell me what the breakdown is between non-unionized and unionized staff, please?
Sure. So it's about a third of our staff belong to a union. There are 3 different unions that represent those employees. There's one clerical. We have some folks, our finance folks, many of them are in the A&R union, and many of our IT folks are in the P4 union. So in all, it's about a third of our employees. Our statute says that if there are employees who are performing positions that are equivalent to positions being performed by unionized employees in the classified service, then our employees who perform those positions shall also be considered to be unionized classified employees and participate in those unions. So this is language that you see in the lotteries and the Lottery Corporation and the Connecticut Airport Authority. So they put it into our enabling statute as well. So that's why we have this bifurcation. And then certainly I can send you the provision in 5-200. I'm just double checking it Yep, it's 5-200 sub P. So, which was revised in 2021 to turn the may into a shall, with regard to the shall issue orders to provide that employees who are exempt from classified service or not covered under a prevailing bargaining unit shall be granted rights and benefits not less than those granted to those employees in the classified service or covered under such contracts. So, so again, that's what applies to sort of the rest of state service, and our board has each year opted to follow that lead. But that is
Okay,
something that the board does on an annual basis.
Great. Thank you very much. It's crazy how much every day you learn something new, just when you think you kind of have your arms around something. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
Melissa, thanks so much for those very, very thoughtful questions and the clarification, Erin. Thank you. Let's continue, Harinder, then. Thank you. Or Erin, did you want to continue?
Nope.
Okay. So we have provided several sensitivity scenarios for your review. I'll start by talking through what the scenarios are, and then we do have a graphic. Actually, this might be a better page. The prior page just provides the numbers, but then this provides the actual graphic, which I think might be easier to follow. Scenario 1 represents an increase in incidence levels by 5% across all years. Okay, so that is this this line right here. If you can you see my mouse? Yes. Okay, great. Okay, so the top line here represents a baseline scenario. As I mentioned before, we do expect deficits in future years, which means the fund balance is expected to decrease based on that scenario. Now, if claims are higher by about 5%, we would expect that the fund balance would decrease further, and that's represented by this this line down here. Scenario 2 is a scenario where we have a claims increase of 10% in fiscal year 2026. So a 1 year bump in claims. After that point, the claims are the same as our baseline scenario. So if we had 1 year increase in claims, and in this case, we illustrated it based on 2026, but you could also extrapolate that to any other year in the future. We do see that the fund balance decreases by roughly 50, a little under $100 million, just with that one change. Okay, this orange line here. The next scenario is a variation on that, where claims increase by 10%, and employment decreases. So in other words, the number of people employed decreases by 5%. So in other words, this reduces contributions by 5% over a 3-year period, so fiscal years 2026, 2027, and 2028. So the combination of that effect is what's illustrated by this purple line, which is down here. Okay. Scenario 4. So that puts us at about a little over 200 million in terms of fund balance at the end of 10 years. You can see how that curve it decreases a fair bit up to fiscal year 2026, and then beyond that point, the curve itself follows our baseline curve. It's just at a lower point. Scenario 4 is another variation on scenario 2, where we have a claims increase over a 2-year period by 10%. Okay, so that's represented by this darker line here, which is what I'm showing over here. Okay. So it's sort of the third line from the top. It's darker. And then scenario 5 has claims increasing by 10% for 2 years, and then employment decreasing for 3 years. So in other words, the contributions lower, but the claims are higher. And that with that scenario, we end up around about between 100 and 200 million in fund balance with that specific scenario. Okay. Scenario 6 is a decrease in the contribution rate. So a little bit of a different take compared to some of the other scenarios. We were looking at the claims and the contribution levels. This one shows what would happen if the fund balance, or if the contribution rate decreases from 0.5% to 0.475%. Okay, in all of the years. If that happened, that effectively is a similar scenario as that scenario 1, where we have an increase in incidence by 5%. So kind of overlaps with this scenario here. But if you look at it, basically what that would result is, based on our current assumptions, fund balance being just over between 0 and 100 million. So roughly around 50 million. And then this last scenario illustrates what would happen if the contribution rates decrease a lot more, down to 0.45%. And if the contribution rates do decrease to that level, all else being equal in our current scenario, then the fund balance would actually be lower by about minus 300. So the purpose of this is to provide you with some sensitivity scenarios, just to show you how sensitive the numbers are based on several of these changes, just to kind of give you a sense of that, and as it relates to all of the decisions that you'll be making around the fund. With that, I'll open it up for more questions.
Are there any questions? For Verinda? Okay. Moving along.
Okay.
So if I could just jump in, I think,
Yeah.
so from staff's recommendation, given that our cap is 0.5%, we have no ability to increase it under existing legislation. And given the sensitivity that Harinder just shared and the impact of reducing the contribution rate, it continues to be the staff's recommendation that the rate remain at 0.5% for 2026.
Thank you, Erin. That makes sense. I see Mike and Molly both have their hands raised. So let's go, Molly.
Thank you. I'll be fast. I think I strongly agree with the staff recommendation. I think given everything we have seen in these projections within the statutory balance as we have them for both this year and for future years, that seems like the only responsible course. The one additional thing I would add is we are trying really hard to increase claims rates. We know that there are very large numbers of Connecticut workers who have earned and paid for these benefits and aren't getting them yet, because it's hard to increase taking rates, not because the team is not working hard, it's hard to get there. And so collectively, if we are doing all the things we can do and are continuing to be a nation leading program in trying to move things forward, we should be seeing claims rates going up consistently year over year, because we know we're still not reaching all the workers we should be. And that only really underscores how important it is to follow the staff recommendation and stay at the 0.5 given the constraints that we're in.
Thanks, Molly. Agreed. Mike.
Yeah, well, I agree with Molly, and I agree with the recommendation. I mean, based on the numbers we just saw, I don't see any justification to reduce the contribution rate. In fact, it seems like it would be imprudent to do so. And one could probably make an argument that we ought to be concerned about how to increase the contribution rate somehow. So I concur with the recommendation that it remain at 0.5%.
Thank you, Mike. Melissa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would say I am very happy to see this sort of detailed background sort of work. And as a member of the Finance Subcommittee, they really did really over and above to get into this sort of spaghetti chain mess, and I certainly appreciate it. One of the things, though, that I have to just point out is I'm not going to call it a contribution rate. I'm going to call it a payroll tax because that's what it is. And I think when we think about where the affordability is of our residents, before we jump to any conversation of increasing, we should be looking at controlling our expenses. And that's why I asked the questions I asked earlier. I'm okay leaving the contribution rate as it is today, but I would be vehemently opposed to raising a payroll tax / contribution rate based on the analysis we have before us today, especially when we don't know what the full complement of enrollees may or may not be. I think there's some things that may be changing. So I'm okay with leaving where it is now, but I don't think we should be just freely talking about increasing a payroll tax without understanding the real struggles that people are facing and having, even if it's just cents on the dollar, leaving their ability to afford things. I would prefer first to look at our expenses before we immediately went to that sort of potential. So thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Justin?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I agree of leaving the contribution rate as is, as the staff has recommended. These are very helpful, the analysis, as was said, but I do just want to agree with Melissa on a point here that we really, if we're ever going to talk about going back to the legislature and asking to be able to increase this contribution rate, we need a deeper dive of what we've done as the authority to cut our own expenses where we could. And I understand there's 3 prongs, and I think that was helpful that Aaron talked about that we're tasked with doing. But outreach, when this program got off the ground, should look differently than outreach years later. And have we cut cost on that? And what does that look like? And it's not going to be an impact when we have this big of a budget, but in good faith, I think we do have to show that we as the authority have done something to cut expenses before we would go and ask for an increase in the contribution rate or a tax for the workers of Connecticut. So as of now, I agree the contribution rate should stay as is, but if we're going to have that discussion down the road, which we've now talked about 2 months in a row, we really, to me, I would need to see that there was something we've done as the authority to cut expenses somewhere. I understand salaries go up. I understand union contracts and those rates, but I would need to see that there was some effort put forward by the authority to cut some expenses.
Thank you, Justin. Aisha?
Yes, thank you. I too also agree that we leave the contribution rate at 0.5%, and also second Justin's recommendation on a deeper dive of the authority's operational expenses to see if there's areas of what we can do differently. So the ways in which we worked when we launched the authority should evolve to where we are right now with normal steady operations. So I just wanted to second that.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Aaron, did you want to add anything? Okay. With that, we can move on, Harinda, if there's anything else that you have to share with us.
That was the end of my presentation. So thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate, and I believe the staff does as well, the discussion and the questions. It helps us all learn from it. I will add that we need to take a vote now and to adopt oopsies. Yeah, we're going to vote on the contribution rate. If there are no more questions at this time. Any more comments? Okay, so may I have a motion to set the 2026 contribution rate at 0.5%?
So moved.
Thank you, Eleanor. May I have a second?
Second, Eva.
Oh, Eva, thank you. Okay, what we're going to do for documentation purposes is do a vote by roll call. So I'm going to ask Amanda I'm sorry, Amber, to take roll call.
Thank you, Fran. Okay, Ava Bermuda Zimmerman.
Here, or yes, sorry.
I know it's
Yeah.
here somewhere.
We're so accustomed to it, but yes, yes.
So we'll do Isha Canada.
Present.
We need a yes or
Yes or
no.
no?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Apologies, we're
Wait, can
voting
wait.
yes.
I'm sorry. Can you restate the question just to make sure we're getting our yays and nays correct here? I'm sorry. Amber, if you can restate the.
Sure,
the-
we're going to do a vote by roll call on the contribution rate remaining at 0.5%. If you could respond with yay or nay.
Yay for Ava Bermuda Zimmerman. Sorry.
Yeah. Isha,
Yes, yay.
thank you. Eleanor,
Yay.
Fran,
Yes.
David,
Yay.
Mike,
Yay.
Molly,
Yay.
Holly,
Yay.
Janae,
I believe I'm a non-voting member.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Janae.
thank you, Janae. Justin,
Yes.
Melissa.
Yes.
Was that a yes or no? I'm sorry.
Oh, that was a yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the yeas have it.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to item 6, we are going to have a discussion and vote to authorize the authority to post the proposed revisions to the finance and accounting manuals for public comment. Dave, will you kindly lead us in this discussion?
Yes, Fran, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We are going to be discussing 2 finance-related policies this morning. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we
We
can.
can see your screen.
Thank you for the confirmation. So the 2 policies that we'll be briefly going over this morning are the finance and accounting policy, which we look at annually to make any changes, and we're also revisiting the credit card policy. Not many changes to the finance and accounting policy this year, as we are more in a steady state now than we have been than ever before. The first significant update was our now annual practice of redesignating any excess operating funds into the contribution fund. For those of you that were here for the budget process a few months ago, you may remember that we decided to move the money to the contribution fund where it can earn interest, and it's also a best practice in terms of budgeting. And actually, I'll show you that in a few minutes when I go over the financials later on at the meeting. The second update was we have an additional statutory reporting requirement now from the State Elections Enforcement Commission, i.e. SEEK. They like to know what contractors we have because contractors are prohibited from soliciting or making certain campaign contributions. So they'll need to know which ones that we have that we spend over $5,000 for. So we update them monthly for any contractors we have that we spend over $5,000 on. The third item is we elaborated on defining the reserve percentages for contributions and benefit overpayments receivables, and I'll go over that in a second. Other minor clarifications were we just clarified what responsibilities or duties can be reassigned by the CEO or controller because sometimes responsibilities change or titles change. So either Erin or myself presently can reassign those as appropriate. We also identified the contribution refund process in the policy itself and tied it in with our existing accounts payable policy. So it aligns with everything because sometimes refunds for contributions can't be refunded on the original platform because they've exceeded the date you can do so. So we have to do it through our AP policy. Circling back to our accounts receivable reserve policy, if you look at the second column, the reserve percentage, that hasn't changed. The percentages are the same. So it's 90% for an allowable doubtful account for anything that's still with the paid leave authority. It goes up to 95% if we send it to our fund recovery vendor, which is what FRV stands for. And then we fully reserve 100% for anything that's deemed to be reserved for uncollectible. What we refined this year was the amount of time that contributions versus benefits overpayments fall into those buckets. So for contributions, for example, anything that's up to 4 months is with the paid leave authority, so that's at 90%. And then anything between 5 to 16 months, when it goes to our fund recovery vendor, which is currently TSI, then the reserve increases to 95%. And why does it increase? Because the older it is, the more unlikely it is that we will collect on it. And then anything that's 17 months or more, we reserve at 100% because it's not likely to be collectible. For benefit overpayments, the timing works a little differently. Anything less than a month and or the collection owner is with the benefit administrator, currently AFLAC, then that's deemed to be at the 90% bucket. From 1 to 11 months, those items go to our fund recovery vendor, so they're at 95%. And then anything that's greater than 12 months or older and or is a misrepresentation and or the collection owner is not the benefit administrator, then it's deemed to be at 100%. So if an item is with the benefit administrator and it's older than 12 months, you might be asking, well, why aren't you fully reserving for it? Because typically those items are payment plans. And so if somebody's still on a payment plan and making the payment plan, then there's no reason to fully reserve it at 100%. So that's the reasoning for that. Moving on to our credit card policy, the big change we made was that credit card charges were originally envisioned to be submitted on expense reports. But thanks to my AP team, we actually use the bill platform to process credit card transactions. And so they flow through an automated process. So that whole manual process of using expense reports is not needed. So because of that, we documented the credit card policy appropriately that credit card expenses would be submitted electronically. The approval process, because it's on bill, also aligns with our current accounts payable process. So we documented that in the policy as well, because now they're both aligned with the accounts payable process. And then we also noted that we have a monthly reconciliation process we do every month as part of that accounts payable process. So we identified that as opposed to reconciling expense reports every month, which we don't need to do. And then a couple of other minor clarifications. The authorization of the credit card insurance was documented as by email. That still remains with the CEO. And we also documented that the Connecticut sales tax exemption applies to those charges on credit cards. So anyone with a credit card has a copy of that exemption policy and the certificate, so they know that the authority should not be charged sales tax on any credit card charges like any other expenses. So that is the summary of the changes in the policy, and I believe we are voting to take that to public comment, but I'm happy to take any questions on any of those policy changes at this time.
Thank you, Mike. Dave, I don't see any hands raised. Are there any questions for Dave? Any comments? Okay, then we'll move on. I'd like
Oh.
to ask for a motion.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
I thought you
sorry.
were asking. Yeah, I'll make that motion to move to public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Molly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, excellent. The motion carries. Thanks, everyone. We're going to move on to committee reports. Item 7. Mike, policy and personnel.
Okay, can you hear me? Because
We can.
okay, good morning, everyone. Our committee met this month and we discussed 2 items. One, the policies that Michael told us about earlier, and 2, the policy that Dave just told us about. So our next meeting is in November.
Thank you. Molly, outreach and engagement?
The outreach committee did not meet in August, but will meet next week.
Thank you. Holly, finance and audit committee.
Yes, thank you. The committee met last month and Spring Group provided the quarterly update and led the discussion on the contribution rate that we voted on earlier in the meeting today. And Dave is going to walk us through this month's financial reports.
Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Hello again.
Take it away, Dave.
All right, we are going to go over the results for July, the first month of the new fiscal year. Everyone can see my screen? Okay. The results for the month of July, and year to date, since it's the first month of the new fiscal year. So if you're wondering why this schedule looks a little smaller than it normally does, that's why we just didn't show year to date, because it's the same as month to date. Our net results for the month were just under $3 million in terms of income less expense. You will see the grand total is a negative almost $11.2 million. I don't want anyone to get unnecessarily alarmed. That is part of the redesignation that we budgeted for and that I discussed a few minutes ago. So we redesignated a little over $14 million of operating funds that we had in the operating reserve that had accumulated over the few years because our operating results had been better than budget. So we made it a policy to transfer those funds back into the contribution fund where it can earn interest, and it could be used for contributions and other things like that instead of just sitting in the operating reserve. So that's what that number is. And you'll see that exact same number again in positive form when we get to the contribution account. Regarding operating, we were ahead of budget by over $316,000. It was the typical expenses for the month. Most items were, most rows were positive for the month. A couple of small negative ones that are pretty much timing differences, and we expect to even out by the end of the year. We did have the administrative fee of $4 million this year. For those of you who remember the budgeting process, we did lower that by $1 million compared to other years, recognizing that the actual administrative expenses of the authority had been lower than budget. So we lowered it by $1 million this year. Moving on to bond funds. This is an updated bond schedule for the month of June. Last month, the total amount did not change. It's exactly the same. What we did change was how we allocated the money. For a couple of months, it had been coded to fund recovery, and as part of our month-end and year-end reconciliation processes, we determined that it should have been in website redesign. So we just reclassed it from fund recovery to website redesign. Again, the total amount did not change. So for July, we are continuing to do work on website redesign. It was just over $55,000 this month. That did have a slight negative variance of $13,000 for the month of July. The bond money that remains available is $1.4 million for the authority. Contribution activity. Contribution activity for the month of July was over a positive $91.8 million. It did result in a negative variance of $3.6 million for two reasons. Number one, our benefits paid was higher than what we budgeted. We did have benefit payments of $37.3 million for the month of July. That is an average run rate of $9.3 million. And if that number does look familiar, it's because Harindra did show it on his slide a few minutes ago. That amount is up from $9.0 million a month ago. So we are seeing benefit payments go up. The other contributing factor was contribution revenue wasn't as high as what we budgeted by over $2.1 million. It did come in at almost at $118.7 million. Fund recovery was slightly lower than what we budgeted at. Investment income was higher than what we budgeted at, came in at $2.1 million for the month. And our benefit administrative fees are lower than what we budgeted by about $100,000. July is the month that the bulk of the contributions come in for the second quarter. So second quarter contributions, as summarized, are as follows. They are the second green column on the sheet. And so for the second quarter of 2025, contributions came in at $120.2 million. That is $12.2 million than the same quarter last year, or 1.9%. Year to date, our contributions are $7.4 million higher than they were for the first 6 months of 2024, or 2.9%. So we are seeing them continue to increase. The contribution fund itself increased to $677.7 million as a result of the July contributions. And so as Harindra indicated before, we are still in a state of solvency with the fund, and that's where it's at. Just a quick look at the balance sheet. I did want to point out that we have over $685 million in assets. Most of that money is in the short-term investment fund where it earns interest. That rate is currently at 4.4%. It's been that way for quite a few months now. So that's a steady state of interest. The bond funds, as I pointed out, was $1.4 million, and the operating funds were reduced to $3.7 million from the $17 million, from the over $17 million that we had previously, because we put that money into the contribution fund. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back because I told you I was going to show you something, and I did not. The redesignation transfer is here and was added to the contribution fund. So that resulted in a total net change in the fund to $91.8 million. But as far as regular operations, it was 77.6. So I just wanted to remember to point that out to everybody. Just quickly, for the month of August, our operating expenses were $1.1 million. That's typically the run rate for expenses thus far. Benefit payments were $49.3 million. That is for 5 weeks. That is because the authority reimburses Aflac on a weekly basis. And so for about 4 months out of the year, there's a 5th week. So that's why it's higher than usual. The other reason it's higher than usual is that benefit payments continue to increase. The average for the month of August was $9.9 million, so up from $9.3 million. We did have record weeks in the month of August. We actually hit $10.3 million 1 week. We have seen it come down since then, but we are seeing people use the program, which is what we want. Okay. No projections this month because it's the first month, so we don't have anything to meaningfully reproject at this time. Those will come along later in a few months. Okay, so that's it for the month of July and a little preview of August. I'm happy to take any questions on the financials at this time.
Dave, thank you. Any questions?
Eva.
Ava.
Ava,
Can you
sorry.
go, it's either or, by the way. Ava is how you pronounce it in Spanish or in Slavic languages, but I go by either or. Thank you
Okay.
for recognizing that.
All right.
I'm curious as to the bump up again, a little bit more explanation on the bump up that you were mentioning.
I'm sorry, the bump up of what?
The 3 million.
Oh, hold on. Let me go back and share. Are you talking about here, or are we talking about the month of July?
I'm looking.
Are you talking about hold on.
I don't think it was that one. I think it was July. I'm sorry, you're going fast and like there was a bump up.
Are you talking about the $3.5 million variance for contributions?
There we go. Yeah. So a little more explanation on that and some less expensive.
Okay. So that was for 2 reasons. So benefit payments were higher than budget by $1.6 million. And that's because of the continuing trends we're seeing of benefit payments going up. And so that was higher than what we budgeted by $1.6 million. That was part of it. And then the second part was contribution revenue. So contribution revenue was somewhat lower than what we have budgeted. It was at $118.7 million compared to $120.9 million. So for this quarter, like I mentioned, the increase was just under 2%. In past quarters, we've seen anywhere between 3% or 5%. It varies by quarter. So this quarter was a little lower than expected. There's no immediate reason that jumps out why it's lower. So 1 quarter does not a trend make, but we are taking a look at that. And if we need to refine any of our projections for the rest of the year, we will. But we're not going to be alarmist about it. But we did take a note of it. So that's just where we are right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for the clarity.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else from anybody?
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dave. Erin, your CEO report, please.
I'll be brief. I want to highlight a couple of things that we've emailed you about. First, in mid-August, the Auditors of Public Accounts issued their annual audit of us, which had 0 findings, which if you are familiar with state government is very rare, so we're very excited about it. We want to take every opportunity to point that out. We do our best to make sure that we follow state practices and best practices with regard to how we operate our business, and always look forward to working with the auditors to make improvements, but it's also really nice when they recognize that we've made improvements and they didn't have anything else to say. We have outside auditors as well. Whittlesey does our external audit, and they are in the process of completing that audit, so more to come from them. We anticipate, Dave doesn't like it when I prognosticate about audits, but the magic 8 ball would say things are looking good. We also issued our annual report at the end of August. I want to thank Jess for taking the lead on pulling all of that together, but the data came from everybody. We did send it to everyone. If you don't have the email, you can always find it at our website. It is a summary of the work that we've been doing that we did for the previous fiscal year. It's got a whole heck of a lot of information about our various activities on the outreach side, on the claim side, on the finance side, private plans. And, it gives us an opportunity to really summarize the really wonderful work that's going on and highlight the responses that we get from the people we serve in Connecticut. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to do so. If you feel inclined to share it, please do. And then I just wanted to report that Dave, Walter, and I just came back from the NASWA paid leave work group. NASWA is the National Association of Workforce Agencies. It is a well-respected organization. It primarily focuses on departments of labor. Their big focus is on unemployment insurance, but a year and a half ago, they voted to create a paid leave work group. So all of the existing paid leave states participate, as well as states that are interested in creating paid leave programs. At this annual meeting, Dave and Walter did a presentation on the work that Connecticut does on ensuring that the payroll deductions that come from employees' paychecks to fund our program are in fact being paid to us, and all of the work we do to make sure that employers are compliant with their responsibilities. So I really want to thank Walter and Dave for putting that presentation together. It was really well received by our colleagues. It's a great opportunity to participate and learn from our other states, to collaborate. And we received some kudos. One of the states was nice enough to say that they wanted to be Connecticut when they grew up because of our outreach and engagement efforts, and the work that our teeny tiny little outreach team does. It far exceeds their size. So I just wanted to share that. We are moving forward with lots of really great initiatives in terms of outreach, in terms of claims, in terms of making sure that everybody knows that the legislation that passed last spring will take effect on October 1st. So if you work with school employees, if you have school employees in your lives, if you know folks who do payroll for schools, please pass along the webinars that we are continuing to hold to make sure that everybody is aware and ready for this legislative change. And those webinars are also posted on our website, both the ones that are upcoming and the ones that we've already done and recorded. So just want to pass that along as well. Happy to take any questions, but I don't want to take up too much more time because we've already gone pretty long today.
Any questions for Erin? All right. Erin, thank you so much. And I'll just echo what Erin said about the report that was shared with everyone. For me, it was just great to go through, and there's also a condensed version, I believe. So, feel proud about what we're doing at the organization and feel proud about what our state is doing and how we're doing it. So I encourage everybody to take a look. And thanks so much to the team for your hard work on that. Do we have any old business? Any new business? Okay, we're about to get 37 minutes back in our day. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Isha. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. The time is 10:23. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy a beautiful day.
Thank you, everyone.